When you hear International Baccalaureate, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably, fancy private schools, right? Well, what if I told you that's only half the story? The other half might actually surprise you.
Take a look at this number, 50%. Any guesses what this represents in the world of the IB? Yup, about half of all IB schools on the entire planet are public, state-funded schools. So how on earth does this famously global program manage to fit inside local public education systems? Let's dig in.
And that really brings us to the central puzzle here. It's kind of like trying to fit a square peg into hundreds of different round holes.
I mean, think about it. How can one single, standardized, international curriculum possibly work within all these unique educational systems? Every country has its own standards, its own languages, its own cultural priorities. It just seems like it shouldn't work, right?
This slide really makes that puzzle concrete. Let's take the IB diploma versus A-levels in England. The IB is all about breadth. You're studying 6 different subjects, plus this core of critical thinking, research, and service. A-levels, on the other hand, prioritize depth. Students specialize in just 3 or 4 subjects. I mean, these are fundamentally different philosophies of education. So how can they possibly coexist? Well, the answer isn't to force that square peg into the round hole. It's about collaboration. It's about partnership.
The IB doesn't just show up and, take over a school system. It actively partners with governments, from the national level right down to the local level, to help them achieve their own strategic goals for education.
And these partnerships are built on some really powerful shared goals. For governments, it's a way to drive broad educational reform and keep their students globally competitive. It's a way to give all students, not just the wealthy ones, access to a world-class education. And it's also about the nuts and bolts, right? Supporting teachers and making sure that an IB diploma actually creates a clear path to that country's top universities.
Okay, so that's the theory, but what does this partnership model actually look like in a real school on the ground?
Well, one method is what's called curriculum equivalence. Take Spain, for example. The government there officially recognizes the IB's middle years program as being equivalent to its own national curriculum. This is a huge deal. It means schools don't have to choose. They can use the IB knowing it already checks all the national boxes and, crucially, gets their students into Spanish universities.
Another key method is adaptation, especially with language. In places like Japan and South Korea, the IB didn't just impose English on everyone. It actually worked with the governments to create dual language diplomas, so key subjects can be taught and even assessed in Japanese or Korean. That makes the whole program way more accessible.
And then you've got the add-on model. In the UAE, for instance, the agreement with Abu Dhabi's Education Council is super clear. Schools have to teach parts of the UAE's national curriculum alongside the IB. The IB program doesn't replace the national identity, it coexists with it.
So we've seen the how of these partnerships. Now let's do a quick world tour to look at the where, because the global scale of this collaboration is truly amazing.
First stop, the Americas. And get this, nearly 90% of IB schools here are public. That's the dominant model. In Peru, for example, the government specifically set up a whole network of 25 high-performance public schools, and every single one of them offers the IB diploma.
It's a similar story in the Asia-Pacific region. Japan has this really ambitious plan to bring the IB into 200 public schools. And you see countries like South Korea, Malaysia, and India all forming these partnerships to strengthen their own state education systems. And it's the same deal across Europe and the Middle East. Spain, Germany, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, they all have these formal agreements with the IB. The theme is always the same: recognition, implementation, and adaptation.
So, okay, we've seen the model, we've seen the global scope. But what is the real-world impact of all this? And, maybe more importantly, is it all smooth sailing?
And we're right back where we started. This visual just makes it crystal clear. The IB world is split almost perfectly down the middle, state-funded and private. This balance is exactly what makes the IB's story so complex and so compelling. And here's where we really see the human impact. This quote from a public school head in the US just says it all. For many, bringing the IB into a state school isn't just about adding another program. It's seen as a vehicle for social mobility, a truly life-changing chance to get students from underserved communities ready for college. But it's not a perfect system. A major challenge is equity. I mean, the IB demands a lot. with these huge projects like the extended essay. And the research shows that students from low-income families may not have the same access to resources, family connections or financial backing, to really nail those intensive projects.
Another huge challenge is that these partnerships depend on governments, and well, government policies can change on a dime. In England, for instance, there are upcoming changes to a funding stream that supports programs like the IB, and that could really impact its availability in state schools. It's just a reminder that these partnerships are dynamic. They're not always set in stone.
So after looking at all of this, the good, the bad, the complicated, what's the most important thing to remember? What's the big takeaway?
The crucial point is this: the IB's success in public schools is all about partnership, not replacement. It's a flexible framework that governments can adopt and adapt to enhance their own systems, to fill gaps, and to meet their own goals, whether that's fostering critical thinking or building a more global mindset.
And that leaves us with a final, really important question to think about. In a world that is more interconnected than ever, what is the right balance? How do you give students a truly global perspective without losing that essential local and national identity that shapes who they are? That is the puzzle that schools and governments all over the world are trying to solve right now.